My son erased me when he was 19, not because I stopped loving him, but because my ex-wife and my best friend got to him first. For 15 years, I kept the same phone number, saved the cards I never got to mail, and waited for a call that never came. Then one night, after my uncle died, my son finally came back. Not to say he missed me, not to ask what really happened. He came back asking about inheritance. And when he called me selfish, I gave him only 3 words: unblock me. Because the message I sent him years ago was still there, unread. And once he opened it, he discovered something neither of us was ready for. Someone had stolen 15 years from both of us. I used to think silence meant my son had chosen to hate me. Later, I learned silence can be manufactured. A blocked message, a hidden card, a story repeated often enough, and suddenly a father becomes the villain without ever getting a trial. That kind of loss does not just hurt. It changes how you trust everyone. Before we begin, tell me where you're listening from tonight and what time it is there. Then stay with me, because this started with a phone call in a quiet kitchen. I was sitting alone at my kitchen table in Youngstown when the phone rang. It was late enough that a call usually meant bad news, and I had already had my share that week. My Uncle Eldon's obituary was folded beside my coffee cup, the edges soft from me picking it up and putting it down all evening. The house was quiet, furnace humming, refrigerator clicking. That kind of quiet that makes old memories louder than they have any right to be. The number on the screen was unknown. I almost let it go. Then something in me, some old foolish part of a father, reached for it. Hello? There was breathing first. Then a voice I had not heard in 15 years. Dad? Just one word. That was all it took. For a second, I was not 66 years old. I was not a man sitting in a quiet house with cold coffee and a dead uncle's obituary. I was back in a garage with a little boy handing me a wrench, asking if he was doing it right. Colton? I said. Yeah, it's me. He sounded older, of course. Lower voice, careful, like he was stepping onto ice and testing where it might crack. I had kept that same phone number for 15 years, not because I liked the plan, not because it was convenient. I kept it because fathers do unreasonable things when they still hope their child might remember how to find them. I heard about Uncle Eldon, Colton said, and there it was, the first crack. Not, I'm sorry I haven't called. Not, how are you holding up? Not even, it's been a long time. He said he heard about Eldon. Then he added, I think we should talk before things get complicated. I looked at the obituary on the table. Before things get complicated. That was not how a son came back to his father. That was how people talked when lawyers, estates, and family rumors had already entered the room. Still, I did not hang up. I had waited too long to pretend his voice meant nothing. We agreed to meet 2 days later at Miller's Diner on Main Street. I chose the place on purpose. Not my house. Not his. Neutral ground. But also a place with history, even if I was the only one who still carried it. Miller's still smelled the way it always had. Burnt coffee, maple syrup, old vinyl booths, and fryer oil that had soaked itself into the walls before Colton was even born. The waitress led me to a booth by the window. Same section where I used to sit with him after Little League games. When he was 9, he ordered blueberry pancakes every time. He would slide the plate across the table and say, Dad, make the squares. I cut them into little blocks because he said I did it better than anyone. The man who walked in that afternoon did not look toward the pancake page. He looked around like he had never been there. That hurt more than I expected. Colton wore a pressed jacket and a wedding ring. He looked tired around the eyes, the way men look when bills follow them from room to room. He shook my hand before he sat down. My own son shook my hand. Good to see you, he said. People say that when they do not know what else to say. We ordered coffee. He asked about my health, asked whether I was still working, asked how the business was doing. Each question sounded polite, but every road led back to the same place. Uncle Eldon, the estate, the trucks, the land, the things left behind. I let him talk. I listened the way I learned to listen in business meetings, not interrupting, not filling silence just because it felt uncomfortable. After a while, patterns show themselves. Then Colton said, Look, I don't want this to turn ugly. That is a strange thing to say when nobody has raised their voice. "I'm your son," he continued. "Whatever Uncle Eldon left you, some of that should stay in the direct family line." Mom and Gannon always said you'd try to keep control of everything if money ever came up. There it was again, Gannon's language. Control, direct family line, keep things from people. Those were not Colton's words, not really. They had been planted, watered, and repeated until he thought they belonged to him. I took a slow sip of coffee. It was bitter and lukewarm. "I see," I said. He leaned back, as if my calm bothered him. "I'm just asking you not to be selfish." Selfish. After 15 years of silence, my son had found one word for me. I could have brought up Shanda right then. I could have said his mother had lied until the truth looked like a stranger. I could have said Gannon Pierce had no right to speak about family after what he did to mine. But I did not. A man learns something after enough years of being misquoted. You do not hand people more words to twist before you know why they came. So I looked at my son across that table and wondered if the boy who once left me voicemails still existed somewhere under all that anger. I still had those messages, an old blue folder on an old phone, his 12-year-old voice saying, "Call me when you get home, Dad." But the man in front of me was not asking me to come home. He was asking me what I was worth. Colton leaned forward. "We need to talk about fairness." I folded my hands on the table and studied the face I had missed for half my life as a father. Before I could answer him, I saw the driveway again, the one where my son stopped being my son before I even got to speak. Colton kept talking across that diner table, but for a moment I was no longer hearing him. His mouth was moving. Words like fairness, family, responsibility, all the right words in the wrong order. I had heard that tone before. Not from him at first. From Shanda, from Gannon, from people who wanted to sound reasonable while they were quietly taking something from you. My fingers rested around the coffee mug, but my mind had already left Miller's Diner. It went back to the summer heat of 2011, to the driveway of the house I helped pay for, repair, paint, and protect. The house where my son learned to ride a bike. The house where Gannon Pierce used to sit at our table and call me brother. Gannon was not some stranger who wandered into my marriage. That would have been easier. He and I built our first small hauling operation, with one used box truck, a borrowed liftgate, and more confidence than money. Later, we added electrical contracting because I knew the work, and he knew how to talk to customers. For a while, it worked. He came to every birthday party, every cookout, every school event. Colton called him Uncle Gannon before he could even spell his own last name. So when I found out Shanda had been seeing him behind my back, it did not feel like one betrayal. It felt like two people had reached into the center of my life and pulled the frame apart. The divorce moved fast after that, too fast for the truth to breathe. Shanda cried to the right people. Gannon stayed close enough to look supportive, but far enough away to avoid questions. Folks around town heard pieces of the story, and most people believed whichever version reached them first. Colton was 19, old enough to drive away, young enough to be steered. I went to the house one evening because I needed 10 minutes with my son. Not to tear his mother down, not to beg, just 10 honest minutes. He stood in the driveway wearing a gray hoodie, arms folded across his chest. His jaw was set in a way I recognized. That was Shanda's expression when she had already decided she was right. Behind him, through the front window, I could see Shanda near the curtain. She did not come outside. She did not have to. Her hand rested on the glass like she was the frightened one. Gannon's pickup was parked near the curb, right where I used to park after late jobs. That little detail has stayed with me longer than I care to admit. I held a manila envelope in my hand. Inside were emails, dates, proof I had not imagined what happened. I did not wave it around. I did not shove it at him. I just said, "Son, there are two sides here. Give me 10 minutes. Colton looked at the envelope like it was something dirty. Mom already told me everything I need to know. Those words did more damage than the divorce papers. I tried again, carefully. I'm not asking you to choose me. I'm asking you to hear me. He shook his head. That's what guilty people say. You don't get to play victim now. I remember the sound of a mower running somewhere down the block, a normal neighborhood sound. That made it worse. The whole world kept moving while my son stood 6 feet away and decided I was not worth hearing. Are you really not going to let me explain? I asked. He looked past me, toward the street. You should have thought about that before you broke this family. Then he turned and walked inside. No shouting, no scene, no slam door at first, just a quiet ending. Shanda stepped back from the window. A moment later, Gannon appeared behind her. He did not smile. He did not need to. He was inside my house, standing beside my wife, while I stood outside with the truth in my hand. That was the day I understood something ugly. Sometimes people do not need to beat you in court. They only need to reach your child before you do. A few hours later, I called Colton. Straight to voicemail. I texted. Nothing. I sent an email. No reply. Later that night, sitting in a cheap motel room off the highway, I wrote the longest message of my life. My clothes still smelled like hot pavement and truck exhaust. The room had a humming air conditioner and a lamp that flickered if I moved too close to it. I typed slowly because I did not want anger in it. I told him I loved him. I told him I would always be his father. I told him I would answer every question when he was ready. Near the end, I wrote, "The truth doesn't disappear just because someone buries it." Then, I sent it. The message showed, delivered. So I believed, foolishly maybe, that one day he would read it. Back at the diner, Colton was still talking about what he deserved. He had no idea that one message sat between us like a sealed box from another life. For 15 years, he believed my silence meant I had quit being his father. For 15 years, I believed he had read my words and chosen not to answer. And right there, with him asking about fairness over a half-empty cup of coffee, a thought came to me that I had never allowed myself to ask. What if my son never actually saw that message? That question followed me home, all the way to the garage where I kept a box I had never stopped adding to. I drove home from Miller's Diner without turning on the radio. The streets were mostly empty, the kind of quiet you get after supper in an old working town. A few porch lights were on. A dog barked somewhere behind a chain-link fence. I passed a ball field near the elementary school and slowed without meaning to. The lights were off, but I could still picture Colton at 10 years old, dusty pants, crooked cap, looking into the bleachers to make sure I was there. I pulled into my driveway a little after 8. For a minute, I stayed in the truck with both hands on the wheel. I told myself to go inside, lock up, get some sleep. That would have been the sensible thing. Instead, I went to the garage. The overhead light flickered twice before it settled. My workbench was clean. Tools hung where they belonged. Extension cords coiled on hooks. I had always believed a man's garage tells the truth about him. Mine said I liked order because my life had once given me none. In the far corner, behind a stack of old moving blankets, sat the wooden box. I built it myself the year after Colton left. Nothing fancy. Pine boards, brass latch, one small lock. On top, written in pencil, were 4 words: "Do not throw away." I unlocked it and lifted the lid. There was the baseball glove, stiff now from age, a Little League photo, a school report card with a note from his teacher saying Colton had a sharp mind but talks too much. That made me smile despite myself. There were birthday cards I bought and never mailed. Christmas gifts I wrapped, then unwrapped, then put away because sending them felt like begging. A cracked Father's Day mug from when he was 8. Blue letters on the side said, "World's Best Dad." I sat on the shop stool and held that mug for a while. The first Father's Day after he cut me off, I kept my phone on the kitchen table all afternoon. I did not tell anyone I was waiting. Men my age get good at pretending they are just checking the weather. No call came. The next year, I told myself he was still angry. The year after that, I said maybe he was busy. Eventually, you stop making excuses out loud. You just learn the shape of disappointment. It comes around every June, wearing a tie in church, smiling from greeting cards at the grocery store, pretending it is only a holiday. The worst one was 2018. Lorene Whitaker, my neighbor, had called me over to fix a porch outlet. While I was there, her grandson showed her something on Facebook, and Colton's name crossed the screen. I should have looked away. I did not. There was a photo of him standing beside Gannon at a backyard cookout. Gannon had one arm around his shoulder, grinning like a man who had earned that place. The caption read, "Happy Father's Day to the man who was always there." I finished Lorene's outlet, packed my tools, and told her everything was working fine. Then I came home. Opened this box and put the phone away before I said something I would regret. That was how I survived those years. Not by being noble, not by being strong every day. I survived by refusing to let people who lied about me decide what kind of father I had been. Beside the mug was my old cell phone. I kept it charged every few months, mostly for one folder, blue voicemails. I pressed play on one of them. Colton's 12-year-old voice filled the garage, bright and careless. "Hey, Dad, don't forget my game Saturday. Call me when you get home." That boy had no idea what was coming. Neither did I. I saved the message again, even though it was already saved. A foolish habit. Like pressing save could protect the past from being taken. Inside that box were all the ordinary moments I missed. Birthdays, graduations, first jobs, bad days, good news. The kind of things a father does not think of as treasure until they are gone. Then I found the photo. Me and Colton at a Little League field. He was holding a trophy. I was holding the camera bag and trying not to look too proud. On the back, in his crooked handwriting, he had written, "My dad never misses my games." That sentence sat in my palm like a verdict. Because later, I missed everything. Not because I chose to, but absence does not explain itself to a child. I was putting the photo back when my phone buzzed on the workbench. A message from Colton. I stared at his name for a moment before opening it. "We need to meet again." There are things you don't know. I looked at the open box, at the mug, the glove, the old phone, the proof of a father who had never stopped holding space for a son who wanted none of it. And I understood something. If Colton truly believed I had abandoned him, then somebody had spent 15 years making sure he never saw what was sitting in that garage. The next time I saw my son, he would prove just how little he knew about those missing years, and reveal a secret that hurt even more. 3 days passed before Colton contacted me again. I was in my office above the service bay, going over repair invoices and fuel receipts, when his name lit up on my phone. For a second, I just watched it buzz across the desk. A man can spend 15 years wishing for a call, then feel his stomach tighten when it finally comes. I answered. His voice had changed since the diner, less uncertain, more organized. "Can we meet again?" he asked. "There are some practical matters we need to discuss." Practical matters. That phrase raised every guard I had. Families talk about hurt, memory, forgiveness. Lawyers talk about practical matters. Still, I agreed. Not because I trusted where this was heading, but because I needed to hear it from his own mouth. We met that evening at a quiet family restaurant near downtown. I arrived first, chose a table away from the kitchen, and watched the door. Colton came in carrying a folder. Not photographs, not old letters, a folder. He sat down, ordered iced tea, and placed it between us like it belonged there. "I don't want this to become a fight," he said. "That makes 2 of us." He opened the folder and slid several pages across the table. The title on the first page read, "Family Settlement Proposal." I looked at those words, then at my son. "So this was prepared before you called me." His eyes shifted toward the window. "I talked to some people." "Your mother?" A pause. "Mom has concerns." "And Gannon?" His jaw tightened. That answered me better than yes would have. Colton tapped the paper. "Uncle Eldon's estate should benefit the family. That's all I'm saying. You've done well. You rebuilt. You have the company, the trucks, the property. I'm not asking for everything. You're asking for something that wasn't left to you. I'm your son. I remember." He did not like that. Then he said the sentence that cut through the room. "You already had 15 years to rebuild your life." I sat back slowly. He said it like those years had been a vacation, like losing my child had given me extra time, like grief was a retirement plan. "Colton," I said, keeping my voice even, "those 15 years were not a gift." He looked down, but he kept going. "Beckett deserves stability." I thought I had misheard him. "Who?" "My son," he said. "Beckett. He just turned 5. The sounds in the restaurant faded around me. Forks against plates, ice dropping into glasses, a waitress laughing near the register. All of it moved far away. "You have a son?" Colton frowned as if I should have known. "Yes. And nobody told me." He rubbed his thumb against the side of his glass. "You weren't exactly around." There it was again, the old story. polished smooth from years of use. I leaned forward. "Show me." He hesitated, then opened his phone. A little boy smiled beside a birthday cake, cheeks round, hair falling over one eye. He had Colton's chin, maybe mine too. It was hard to tell through the ache in my chest. 5 years old, first steps gone, first words gone, first scraped knee gone. I had not just been kept from my son, I had been locked out of another generation. Colton took the phone back too quickly. "Beckett is why this needs to be resolved," he said. "School costs, housing, college someday. You know how expensive everything is now." And just like that, my grandson became a line item, a pressure point. A child I had never held was being placed on the table beside a settlement proposal. I looked at Colton for a long moment. "Did you come here because you wanted a father?" I asked. "Or because you wanted access to what belongs to one?" His face changed, not anger exactly. More like I had taken away a script and left him without the next line. "I'm trying to protect my family." "So am I." He gathered the papers with stiff hands. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "No, I'm making it honest." We left separately. I drove home under streetlights, my mind fixed on that little boy's face. Beckett, my grandson. A name I should have learned with joy, not across from a folder full of demands. When I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed. A message from Colton. "You owe us." I read it twice. For 15 years, I had thought the worst pain was being cut off by my son. That night, I understood there was another kind of loss. Finding out a child existed only after he had already grown past the years you could never recover. And somewhere behind Colton's words, I could still hear Gannon. The next morning, my son accused me of never trying to reach him. That was when I finally told him to unblock me. I did not sleep well after Colton's message. "You owe us." Those 3 words sat beside me all night like an unwelcome guest. By dawn, I had coffee in a travel mug and a clipboard under my arm, trying to keep my hands busy with work. That was how I handled pressure. I checked job schedules, called a foreman about a panel upgrade, and drove out to a construction site on the east side where one of my crews was running conduit through a new medical office. I had just parked beside a row of service trucks when my phone rang. Colton. I answered from the cab, engine off, windshield facing a half-built wall of steel studs and insulation. He did not say hello. "You act like I'm the one who walked away," he said. His voice was sharp, but underneath it I heard something older, something bruised. "I'm listening," I said. "No, you're not. You never did. You disappeared, Dad. You let Mom and me figure everything out by ourselves. Do you know what that felt like?" Workers moved across the lot in hard hats. A forklift beeped as it backed toward a pallet of drywall. Ordinary noise, ordinary morning. And there I sat, hearing my son repeat a story that had been handed to him so many times it had become part of his bones. "I was 19, he continued. "I was angry, fine. But if you cared so much, why didn't you try harder?" That one reached deeper than the demand for money, because it questioned the only thing I had never stopped being, a father. I closed my eyes for a moment, not to hide from him, but to keep myself from saying too much too soon. I had learned that truth offered at the wrong time can sound like an attack, and I did not want to win a phone call. I wanted my son to look where he had never looked, so I said 3 words, "Unblock me." The line went quiet. "What?" "Unblock me." "What are you talking about?" "Your phone, your email, old accounts, if you still have them. Look at the blocked contacts. Look at the archived messages. Then call me back." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "That's your answer? That is the only answer you need right now. You're unbelievable." "Maybe," I said. "But look before you decide." He hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand until the screen went dark. Then I got out of the truck, put on my hard hat, and walked the site with my crew like my chest was not carrying a storm. A man still has responsibilities. Breakers still need labeling. Customers still expect a job done right. Life does not pause because your past finally knocks hard enough to shake the walls. By lunch, I had not heard from him. By 3, still nothing. I told myself not to expect anything. Expectation had been a dangerous habit where Colton was concerned. That evening, I stopped by the office, signed payroll, and drove home under a sky the color of wet cement. I ate half a sandwich, standing at the kitchen counter. Then I placed my phone beside the plate and waited without admitting I was waiting. Much later, across town, Colton must have started searching. I did not see him do it, but I could imagine it. At first, pride would make him careless. Then, irritation would make him thorough. Old phone settings, blocked senders, email filters, archived folders, accounts he had not opened in years. Somewhere in that digital clutter, he found me. Not the version Shanda described, not the selfish man Gannon built for him. Me. The message from that motel room was still there. Delivered. Unread. 15 years old. I knew what he saw, because I had kept my own copy. I know you're angry. I will not ask you to choose between your mother and me. I'll answer every question when you're ready. I love you more than this moment. And near the end, the line I wrote with my hands shaking over a motel desk. The truth doesn't disappear just because someone buries it. Nothing cruel, nothing accusing, no demand, no threat. Just a father leaving a light on. Close to midnight, my phone rang again. This time, when I answered, Colton did not come in swinging. He sounded smaller, not weak, just shaken, like a man who had leaned against a wall and discovered it was painted cardboard. How many times? He asked. I stood in the kitchen, one hand on the counter. How many times what? How many times did you try to contact me? I looked toward the hallway that led to the garage. I thought of the box, the cards, the old phone, the blue voicemails folder he had not even understood yet. I also knew this was the moment to be careful. Not gentle enough to hide the truth. Not harsh enough to make him run from it. More than you were told, I said. He breathed into the line. Then, quieter. Dad, what else didn't I see? That question changed everything. Because the answer would force my son to confront something worse than betrayal, the possibility that someone had stolen 15 years from both of us. Colton's question sat between us through the phone line. What else didn't I see? I could have answered with anger. A younger version of me probably would have. But at 66, you learn that truth needs a steady hand, especially when it is about to cut through half a lifetime of belief. So, I told him what I could. Birthdays, I said. Christmas. Your college acceptance, once I heard about it. The apartment on Belmont. The email you used after graduation. Any address I found that seemed current. He did not interrupt. Some came back. Some vanished into silence. Some accounts blocked me. I thought you were telling me to stay away. There was no sound from him except breathing. Then he said, barely above a whisper, I didn't know. I believe you. That was the first generous sentence I had given him without protecting myself first. For the next several days, Colton did not call much. When he did, his words were shorter. No speeches. No accusations. Just questions. Did you ever send anything to Mom's house? Yes. What year? Several. Did you send one when I turned 21? I did. The line would go quiet after that. I later learned what he was doing. He was searching. Old email accounts, forgotten cloud folders, a laptop Shanda kept in a closet. A storage unit full of Christmas bins, tax files, and the kind of family junk nobody throws away because it feels too final. That was where he found the envelopes. They were in a plastic tote marked winter decorations, tucked below a wreath in a box of cracked ornaments. My handwriting was on the front of every one. Some were cards. Some had photos inside. One held a check I sent to help with college books. Never cashed, never mentioned. None were opened. Not one. Colton sat on the concrete floor of that storage unit and read them in the dust. I know that because he told me later, and because his voice changed when he described it. The cards were not dramatic. I had not written like a man building a case. I had written like a father trying not to disappear. Happy birthday, son. I hope life is treating you kindly. I am proud of you, even from far away. I will not ask you to choose sides. I only hope one day you will ask your own questions. That last one stayed with him. He took the envelopes to Shanda that afternoon. She was at her kitchen table, going through coupons like it was an ordinary day. Colton set the stack in front of her. What are these? Shanda looked once and folded her hands. Old things, she said. Old things from Dad. Her mouth tightened. I was trying to protect you. From birthday cards? From being pulled backward. From confusion. From him making you feel guilty. Colton held up the college check. He sent money. And money always came with strings when your father was involved. That was one of her gifts. Taking something plain and making it sound dangerous. Colton did not shout. That shook her more than shouting would have. Did you hide them? I made choices during a painful time. That is not an answer. Her eyes hardened then. You were a child. I was 19. You were my child. And he was my father. She looked away. For a man raised on one story, that silence said plenty. 2 nights later, Colton went back to Shanda's house to pick up more boxes. He had a key to the garage side door, and according to him, he only meant to grab the tote and leave. But as he stepped in, he heard voices from the kitchen. Shanda and Gannon. Colton stopped near the washer, out of sight. At first, it was ordinary arguing. Shanda sounded nervous. He's asking about everything now, Gannon answered with that smooth, tired tone he used when he wanted people to think he was the only adult in the room. Then you should have gotten rid of the old paperwork. I didn't think he'd go digging. You never think 2 moves ahead, Shanda. Then Colton heard his own name. Colton is not stupid, she said. No, Gannon replied. He is angry. Angry people are useful. They don't ask questions. Colton told me later that he did not move, not for several seconds. He just stood beside a stack of paint cans, holding a box of old letters, while the sentence rearranged 15 years of his life. Angry people are useful. All those warnings about me. All those little comments. Your father only cares about control. Your father gave up. Your father will twist the truth if you let him. Suddenly they were not memories. They were tools. I was in my office when he called that evening. Outside my window, one of the mechanics was closing the bay doors, the chains rattling against the tracks. I had a contract open on my desk, but I knew by the way Colton said my name that paperwork would have to wait. Dad, what happened? His breath shook. What if my mother and Gannon lied to me about more than just you? I stood up slowly. Before I could answer, I understood something else. Gannon had spent years depending on Colton's anger. And if that anger was starting to crack, he would know it soon. Desperate people rarely go down quietly. After Colton asked that question, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. For almost a week, he stopped arguing with me. He stopped defending Shanda. He stopped saying Gannon had only tried to help. Our calls grew shorter, but not colder. He would ask one careful question, listen to my answer, then say he needed time. I understood that. When a man discovers his life may have been built on someone else's version of events, he does not simply change his mind. He has to walk through every memory again, this time with the lights on. That kind of silence is not empty. It is pressure. 3 days later, a certified envelope arrived at my office. Odessa Hart, my bookkeeper, brought it upstairs and set it on my desk. Looks legal, she said. I opened it with a utility knife. The letter came from a firm I had never used and never heard of. The language was polished and insulting. It accused me of emotional manipulation, financial coercion, and improper influence over future family assets. It warned that any attempt to alienate Colton from trusted maternal family figures could be used against me. Trusted maternal family figures. That phrase had Gannon written all over it. I did not call Colton. I did not call Shanda. I placed the letter in a folder, locked my office, and drove downtown to see Ambrose Vance. Ambrose had been my attorney for 12 years. He was not flashy. He wore brown suits, read every line twice, and had the calm face of a man who had watched people ruin themselves by talking too much. He read the letter once, then again. Finally, he removed his glasses and said, "This is not a serious legal argument." "Then what is it?" "A warning shot. To scare me? To make you tired," he said. "To make you settle. To make you choose quiet over exposure." I looked out his office window at the courthouse across the street. 15 years earlier, quiet had cost me my son. "I'm done paying for peace with silence," I said. That night, I sat on my back porch until the bugs started tapping against the screen door. I will be honest, I considered walking away, not because Gannon frightened me, Because I knew the truth would hurt Colton, and maybe Beckett one day too. If I spoke, the family would split open. If I stayed quiet, the lie would keep breathing. Neither felt clean. The next morning, Merrick Doyle came into my office angry about a job site mistake. Another worker had blamed him for a shipment that never arrived. He slapped a delivery receipt on my desk and said, "Sometimes I wonder if speaking up is even worth it." He did not know what he had said, but I did. "If you've got proof," I told him, "you bring it forward. Otherwise, the loudest person becomes the honest one." After he left, I sat there thinking about my own advice. 2 nights later, Gannon came to my house. No phone call, no courtesy. Just headlights across my living room window and his truck pulling hard into my drive. I saw him through the front glass before he reached the porch. Same broad shoulders, same expensive boots, same face he used when he wanted people to believe anger was authority. I opened the door but did not step outside. "What do you want, Gannon?" He pointed a finger at me. "You need to stop poisoning that boy. That boy is 34. He was fine before you started digging up old garbage." He was uninformed. Gannon laughed once, sharp and ugly. "You always did think you were better than everyone." I glanced past him toward the small doorbell camera beside the frame. The blue light was on. Recording. So I let him talk. "You should have signed that proposal," he said. "Everybody could have moved on." "Everybody? Don't play innocent. You're turning Colton against his mother. You start messing with Beckett too, and you may find out there are consequences." There it was. Beckett, the pressure point. I kept my voice level. "Are you threatening my relationship with my grandson?" "I'm saying you already lost your son once. Don't make sure you never meet the little boy." Years ago, I would have stepped onto that porch and matched him word for word. That night, I stayed still. He kept going. Business trouble, legal trouble, family trouble, people in town hearing what kind of man I really was. Every sentence sounded like a threat dressed up as advice. When he finally left, he looked pleased with himself. I waited until his taillights disappeared. Then I downloaded the footage. The next afternoon, Ambrose watched it in his office. He leaned back before the video even ended. "That helps," he said. "It proves he threatened me. It proves motive, pressure, interference. It shows he is not a concerned family friend. He is a man trying to control what everyone says and sees." For the first time in this whole mess, I felt the ground shift under someone else's feet. But truth has a strange way of flushing out worse things before it clears the air. Late that night, Ambrose called me at home. His voice was lower than usual. "Dorian, we have enough to expose most of this." "Most?" He paused. "There may be another document, something Gannon is holding back. If it exists, he will use it before mediation." I stood in my kitchen, the same place where Colton's first call had found me. "What kind of document?" "I don't know yet," Ambrose said. "But men like him do not save their weakest card for last." By the time that missing document surfaced, everything we thought we knew was about to be tested one final time. The document surfaced 2 days before mediation. Not from Gannon, not from Shanda, not from anyone who had suddenly grown a conscience. It came from Hollis Crane, a retired accountant who had handled payroll for our old trucking operation back when Gannon and I still shared an office. Hollis had been cleaning out metal filing cabinets in his basement, the kind of cabinets men keep because they think every receipt might matter someday. One sealed folder had my old company name on it. Ambrose called me in that afternoon. When I arrived, Colton was already there, sitting stiffly in the conference chair, looking like he had not slept well. Ambrose laid out the papers carefully. Most were routine: fuel logs, vendor notes, tax records. Then came one memorandum. It was written in Gannon's tidy, business-like language. No obvious confession, no dramatic sentence. Just cold phrases that said, "Enough." Limit direct emotional contact. Manage information flow. Avoid unpredictable father-son exchanges. Control reactions until legal and domestic matters settle. Colton read it twice. His face did not change much, but his hand tightened around the page. "That's about me," he said. Ambrose nodded. "It appears so." Before any of us could decide how to use it, Gannon made his last move. That evening, Colton received a photocopy of an old letter. Gannon had sent it through Shanda with a simple message. Before you trust your father, read what he really wrote. The photocopy showed one sentence in my handwriting. Maybe we're both better off without each other. Colton brought it to mediation the next morning. We met in a private room downtown. No judge, no spectators, just a long table, bad coffee, and enough history to fill the walls. I sat beside Ambrose. Colton sat across from me. Shanda kept a tissue folded in her palm. Gannon leaned back like a man who believed the room still belonged to him. The mediator began with property, inheritance, and family resolution. Gannon interrupted before she finished. "Let's stop pretending," he said. "Dorian's been manipulating this boy since he smelled money slipping away." I did not answer. He looked at Colton. "Show him." Colton placed the photocopy on the table and pushed it toward me. His voice was rough. "Did you write this?" I looked down at the cropped sentence. For one painful second, I understood how effective it was. A small piece of truth can be more dangerous than a whole lie. "Yes," I said. Colton's face fell. Then I opened my folder. "But I also wrote the rest of it." I slid the original letter across the table. Ambrose had found my copy in the garage box after I told him where to look. Colton read the full sentence aloud, slowly. "Maybe we're both better off without each other for now, until you're ready to hear the truth." The room went still. I looked at Gannon. "You cut off the part that mattered." His mouth opened, then closed. Shanda whispered, "Gannon." But Colton was not finished. He took out his phone and set it on the table. "When I heard you in Mom's kitchen," he said to Gannon, "I started paying attention. And when you kept calling me, I recorded one conversation. Ohio is a one-party consent state." I checked. For the first time, Gannon sat up straight. Colton pressed play. Gannon's voice filled the room, casual and confident. "Keeping you two apart made things easier. Your mother needed stability. I needed the business clean. You needed somebody to point your anger at." Then came the sentence that ended him. "If you and Dorian had started talking years ago, none of this would have worked." Nobody moved, not even Gannon. There are silences that feel empty, and there are silences that feel like a building coming down floor by floor. This was the second kind. Ambrose placed the doorbell footage summary beside the memo, then the hidden letters, then the blocked message printout. One by one, the stories stopped being emotional and became documented. Shanda began crying quietly. "I thought I was protecting you," she said to Colton. He looked at her for a long time. "No, you were protecting your version." The mediator cleared her throat and asked whether Colton still wished to pursue a claim tied to Uncle Eldon's estate. Colton stared at the proposal folder as if it belonged to someone else. "No," he said. "I don't care about that anymore." Gannon turned on him. "Don't be foolish. You're walking away from what your family owes you." Colton answered without raising his voice. "My family owed me the truth." That hit harder than any shouting would have. I unfolded the printout of the message I sent from that motel room 15 years earlier. At the bottom was the line I had written when hope was all I had left. "The truth doesn't disappear just because someone buries it." Back then, it had been a promise to my son. Now, it was evidence. The meeting ended without a victory speech. Gannon left first, alone, his phone already buzzing with calls he did not want to answer. A major contractor later paused his account after seeing the legal summary. People in town did not need every detail. They had enough. Shanda stayed seated, staring at her hands. Colton stood near the door, unable to look at me at first. Then, he finally did. "Dad," he said, and the words sounded younger than him. "Is it too late to know my father?" I thought I knew how to answer. Then I stepped outside and saw the little boy waiting in the hallway. The little boy stood beside Colton in the hallway, holding a toy car in one hand and a paper cup of water in the other. He looked up at me with open curiosity. No fear, no blame, no idea that the adults around him had just finished dragging 15 years of pain into the light. Colton crouched beside him. "Beckett," he said softly, "this is your grandpa." The word hit me harder than anything Gannon had said in that room. Grandpa. Not Mr. Klein. Not Dorian. Grandpa. Beckett tilted his head. "Do you like baseball?" I laughed before I could stop myself. Not because it was funny, exactly. Because life has a way of handing you a broken heart and a small miracle in the same breath. I sure do, I said. He nodded like that settled the matter. I play t-ball. I'd like to see that sometime. Colton looked at me then, and there was something in his face I had not seen since he was a boy. Hope mixed with shame. That is a difficult thing to look at in your own child. A few days later, he came to my house alone. No folder, no lawyer's language. No talk about Uncle Eldon's property. Just my son standing on my porch with both hands in his coat pockets, asking if he could come in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had answered his call, the same chair where I had stared at Eldon's obituary and wondered why my son had finally remembered me. Colton looked around the room like he was trying to place himself inside a life he had refused to enter. "I'm sorry," he said. I did not rush to forgive him just to make the moment easier. He kept going. "I'm sorry I believed them. I'm sorry I never asked. I'm sorry I let Gannon stand where you should have been. I'm sorry about Beckett." That one tightened my chest. He wiped at his face with the heel of his hand, embarrassed by his own tears. "I don't know how to make up for 15 years. "You can't," I said. He looked down. I reached across the table, not to rescue him from the truth, but to keep him from mistaking it for rejection. "I forgive you, Colton. But I cannot give you back the years you handed to someone else." He nodded slowly. It hurt him. It was supposed to. Some truths are not punishment. They are boundaries. Forgiveness is not the same thing as restoration, I told him. We can rebuild, but we are not pretending the bridge never burned. From there, things moved slowly. Gannon's world did not collapse in one dramatic afternoon. Real life is rarely that neat. What happened was quieter and maybe worse for a man like him. A contractor paused business with him after Ambrose's summary circulated through the right hands. A bank asked new questions. People stopped taking his calls as quickly. His influence shrank. Shanda started counseling after Colton refused to let her see Beckett without clear boundaries. She called me once and said, "I thought I was doing what mothers do." "No," I told her. "You were deciding what a son was allowed to know." She cried. I did not comfort her. That was not my job anymore. One afternoon, Colton came by again. This time I took him to the garage. The box was on the workbench. He opened it with care, as if the hinges might accuse him. He touched the baseball glove, the cards, the old report card, the Father's Day mug. Then I handed him the old phone. "What's this?" "I think some of these belong to you." He opened the folder marked Blue Voicemails. When his 12-year-old voice filled the garage, he froze. "Hey Dad, don't forget my game Saturday. Call me when you get home." Colton covered his mouth. He was not just hearing a recording. He was meeting the boy he used to be, the one who had trusted me without needing proof. "I did call," I said quietly. "Just not always in ways you were allowed to hear." He cried then. Not loudly, not for show, just a grown man sitting on a garage stool, grieving a childhood someone had edited without his permission. A few weeks later, I went to Beckett's t-ball game. The field smelled like cut grass and concession stand popcorn. Parents sat in folding chairs. Someone's grandmother kept yelling, "Run, honey, run!" even when the children were already standing still. Beckett spotted me in the bleachers and waved with his whole arm. I waved back. It was ordinary. That was why it mattered. On the drive home, I thought about Eldon's inheritance. All that land, all those assets, all the arguments it had awakened. The money had brought Colton back, but it was not the thing worth saving. The real inheritance was truth. The chance to stop letting old lies raise the next generation. Months passed. Colton and I kept trying. Some conversations were easy. Some ended with both of us tired. He brought Beckett over for lunch. I went to games. We did not pretend we were suddenly whole. We simply refused to let the past keep owning the future. At Beckett's next game, he hit the ball off the tee and ran the wrong direction at first. Everyone laughed kindly. Colton guided him toward first base, and when Beckett finally scored, he came running straight to me. He threw his arms around my waist and shouted, "Did you see that, Grandpa?" I looked over his head at Colton, then back at the little boy who had no reason to carry what we carried. "I saw it," I said. "I wouldn't have missed it for the world." People think the worst thing a lie can steal is money. They are wrong. The worst thing a lie can steal is time, and time is the one inheritance nobody can ever give back.